This week, Fortinet and Gemalto, anyway, and others support the new VMware Cloud offering. Firewall management, Okta makes a play to expand into a new category. Yep, that's right. Before, I said VMware in the cloud. We'll talk about that. ForcePoint buys a company. AlgoSec has some product announcements. That'll round out the news for today. Matt Alderman and Michael Santarcangelo will be hosts with me on this show and join me in discussing security operations and endpoint protection, in addition to diving into enterprise network management, into the pool, into maybe the deep end, maybe the shallow end, then the deep end. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The teleprompter now has artificial intelligence, Doug, and updates itself. It's awesome. This week, and talk about them as it relates to enterprise security. You're gonna do great. we're gonna.
I think that people think that you and I talk like every day at night. You know, It's like, hey, what are you doing? It's kind of a bit of an exhausting week, and I think that we noticed that a little bit in the stories for this week as well.
Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome, everyone, to episode 59 of Enterprise Security Weekly. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, reporting on August 30th, 2017, with some of my illustrious co-hosts. John Strand is not here with us today, but we've recruited the help of none other than the beach bum himself, Mr. Michael Santarcangelo. Welcome, Michael. Michael. Hello, Michael. This is the... Oh, there was a delay in Skype. I'm like, oh, this is the part where you talk. I can't hear you. Michael, you there?
Talk. So that's weird.
I guess it's just me, Paul.
Hey, Matt Alderman is also on the lines via Skype. Apparently, Michael's having some technical difficulties. Matt, welcome to the show. It's nice. Have you been on the show before as a guest for when you were at Tenable, maybe?
Yeah, when I was at Tenable,
okay.
I was on, and you and John interviewed me. Since the show started from the work at Tenable,
that's right.
It's about time I co-hosted this one.
It's awesome. It comes like completely full circle, Matt. This is so exciting. And the three of us will be on Startup Security Weekly this Friday. So make sure you tune in.
I know. I get a double this week.
Dude, it's awesome. I am so excited to talk about category design creation and play bigger. I'm almost all the way through the audiobook, I think, of it. And it's just one of the best business books I've ever read, certainly.
It's good, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. Michael, you there?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what's happening. Skype doesn't like me.
No worries. It's nice to have you, Michael. And it's funny because we'll actually, a lot of the stories that I chose this week, I look at the world in a different way almost. Like I knew this stuff existed and I was like, I was like creating my own category without even knowing that that's what I was doing. And so that book really put a lot of the pieces together. And I realized that we were analyzing categories on this show, and we just like really weren't framing it in the way that they framed it in that book. And so they put a lot of pieces together in the way that we cover stories, which is awesome. Before we get there, though, I can't forget the announcements. itpro.tv/enterprise security, firmly planting themselves in the training category, which is interesting because you can use the discount code ES30, try it free for 7 days, get 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. But now they've kind of, I would call it pivoting, right? But they're creating a new category going after the enterprise business that wants to provide training for their employees and allowing you to assign training modules and keep track of the progress of an employee as they go through their training journey, which I think is great. You can go to itpro.tv/enterprise security and learn more. The second announcement is our Domain Tools webcast. This is going to be so much fun. Joff Thayer and I Basically, the way I framed it was that users love to click stuff. And whether that's intentional or unintentional, they're loading bad stuff in their browser. And there's some really cheap, easy, and free ways in which, through domain blacklisting, you can not have that content even loaded into the browser. So it's a great protection mechanism. And Joff and I will talk about it in depth from more of an open source, kind of free, easy thing that even an enterprise can take advantage of. Domain Tools will then talk about their Iris product, which gives you a lot more functionality as it's a commercial product, and they have some awesome intelligence on domains and IP addresses. So that's going to be a lot of fun. DomainTools.com/Security Weekly. Okay. So now, hey, we're on to the stories. And the first one, I think we should start with just talking about VMware. And it's funny. I think it was Matt and we were talking about VMware, and I was like, well, it's kind of interesting. Like, they created a category for virtualization, and Amazon came along and created the cloud category with AWS. And now it seems like, to catch up, VMware is putting their platform on Amazon's. Is that essentially what's happening?
Yeah, essentially. What they're trying. So I worked for the Federation for a while when I was at RSA, and one of the big internal kind of projects at EMC was how would EMC, compete with AWS, right? So VMware, EMC, RSA started to build their own kind of cloud platform, leveraging the VMware environment, leveraging some of the Dell or the EMC backend products and stuff, and it didn't go too well. They struggled a lot with it, but their enterprise customers needed a way to get their VMware environment kind of in the cloud. And so VMware announced a partnership with AWS about a year ago at VMworld, and it's been in beta. They officially took it out of beta at VMworld this week. But I think what's interesting here is they're like, look, Amazon's winning the cloud game. We can't compete with them.
Right.
But how do we make our enterprise customers happy by allowing them to move their VMware images into AWS and others? Because they've also got partnerships with Google Cloud and Azure as well. So what you're seeing is the ability for enterprise VMware customers to hybridize in the cloud.
I gotcha. And it seems like one of the benefits as to why you would do that ties into some of our other announcements where we talk about Fortinet's FortiGate virtualized security appliance available on VMware Cloud on AWS. We talk about Gemalto announces data protection services for VMware Cloud. It seems like because VMware owned that category and every enterprise on the planet has some kind of VMware installation, they obviously expanded out their partners. As they move VMware into the cloud or make it easy for people to do that, their partners are following along, really strengthening the position and maybe giving enterprises a benefit to move into their VMware instances into the cloud and stay in that environment and not kind of break out and leave VMware altogether. Would you say that's an accurate analysis?
Yes. It's a bridge. It's really a bridge from on-premise data center to hybrid cloud environments. I think it works for a period of time. I think long-term, look, as people rewrite their applications, leveraging Docker and microservices and all this other stuff, that's when you start to see more exodus from VMware, in my opinion, because that's the trend, right? That's where everything's going. So this allows VMware to stay relevant to their enterprise customers for a period of time. And you see the ecosystem coming together. Even VMware's announcements around Photon OS for their container environment. You saw App Defense as an announcement this week, which is better security on the VMware platform, very focused on protecting the VMware base. And granted, they have to do it because Docker and Kubernetes and all this other stuff is so disruptive longer term. They need to continue to figure out how to bridge the gap. That's my opinion.
Right. Michael?
Does this create a situation then where, I mean, think about it. So I'm in the enterprise today. We're heavily invested in VMware, and I've been using that as an excuse not to go to the cloud or whatever else. Or anything we've done has come under the expense of new development, new way of doing things. I totally get where this is a smart bridge and it's a way to keep cash coming, at least in the foreseeable future. But does this have the potential then of also, I don't want to use the word disruptive, but does it mean then that now I'm in the enterprise and I go, oh, good, I don't have to change my way of thinking. I can just keep doing it the way I'm doing it. We'll just move it and put it in any one of the three, whoever gives us the best price. I don't care. I can even move back and forth between them. Like, is this just a smart bridge move, or is there maybe something bigger at play here because it doesn't force people comfortable to really have to change, and it now gives them a way to choose between cloud providers, which might really commoditize what's really already a commodity?
Hmm.
Yeah, well, look, they've kind of said we're going to be Cloud Switzerland, right?
Yeah.
We don't care where you run it, just run VMware, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, it's giving them the ability for companies to move to the cloud, move to any infrastructure, and not have to worry about it too much, and then play whatever the best pricing is. Short term, look, some of these legacy applications are going to get rewritten, right? Digital transformation, the digital business trends are going to continue to force these enterprise customers to rewrite their applications. And as they look to rewrite, the question that a company is going to have to ask is, we're going to continue to rewrite it as running on VMware and virtualized images. We're going to fully containerize and run VIC, which is their VMware Integrated Container Service, or are we going to go to Kubernetes, Docker, and not pay anything, and then go run it on the infrastructure? That's the decision that I think every enterprise will eventually make with all their legacy applications.
Interesting. So VMware has to essentially, at this point, be a player more in the container space, in the container platform, rather than so much the cloud platform, right?
Yeah, and you see that with both VIC, the VMware Integrated Container Service, and the Photon OS announcement from last week is, yeah, they're starting to bring the ability to run containers into their environment. You're still going to pay because you have to pay for the VMware environment, but it's a bridge for containerized applications for those people that are like, I know VMware, I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have the best utilization of resources, but it's better than reinventing everything in the cloud.
Right. Yeah, if they do it right, I can see them gaining a lot of enterprise adoption to run your container services, especially with some of the issues that many bring up with, Kubernetes and Docker and that other kind of stuff. What VMware could provide is a nice, stable enterprise platform to run your containers on. And I think the company hinges on it, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah. So you guys are much more into the containerization than I am. What's the uptake today? I mean, are we still at the early adopter phase?
We are. So right now, I sit on a ton of strategy calls here. You're looking at 10% in production, moving to 40% this next coming year. The container app space is going to be $2.7 billion by 2020. So yeah, the hockey stick's about to hit. So okay, maybe 10% to 40%, but then you're going to see much greater adoption. This is the market trend that's coming and going to hit us really, really fast.
Yeah, I agree with Matt's assessment wholeheartedly. I think that containerization solves so many problems, both on the security operations and development front, that if you're rewriting your application or you're writing a new application, that's where you're going to start to see that uptick. I think what's held people back is the technology was so new that it wasn't stable. But once you see players like VMware starting to embrace this technology, everything's just going to fall in line. And your hockey stick analogy, I think, is spot on. So. It's interesting. Okta, we're going to talk about categories on Friday. And so they have tried to establish themselves as the single sign-on category king. Maybe it could be debated as to whether or not they've achieved that. But they're trying to expand out their category and take over another category of multi-factor authentication. And they announced recently that, hey, if you use Okta, you can use now our new multi-factor authentication service for free. And if you want some more advanced features, you can pay us for that, which I think is a super smart move for Okta. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think we can all agree that Okta has won the category king for single sign-on. Now that they're public and out there, they're definitely the one that have led the space. The one login hack kind of hurt one login a little bit. But yeah, Okta's kind of got it, right? So look, good category kings figure out what their next category is.
Yep.
That's right.
So it's not an an unprecedented or unlikely move that they go to multi-factor authentication. The question is, how do they do it different or better than the existing players, right? So if I were to look at multi-factor authentication right now, who's kind of leading that space? It was RSA a long time ago with the tokens, but they've been replaced. Duo is doing fantastic.
Yeah,
out there.
that would be my vote. I would say Duo is the category king for multi-factor.
Yeah, I mean, they've made it simple, easy. What Doug Son's done over there is just amazing, right? From a two-factor. So Okta has to figure out how to disrupt Duo to take over that market, right? And so when we get into some of this on Friday, the question is, okay, I'm the category king here. How do I go after this market, right? And it's not just, hey, me too, because that means I'm a follower. I'm not a leader. So they have to do something different, I think, or better than what Duo's doing. I think that's a tall order because Duo's doing it really, really well right now.
Yep, I agree. In acquisitions, ForcePoint has snapped up Red Owl. So ForcePoint has an interesting, in fact, we took a somewhat of a briefing with them recently. A lot of people don't recognize the ForcePoint name, but if I say WebSense, everyone's like, oh, yeah, right. So ForcePoint was bought by Raytheon. I think was it Raytheon? One of those.
I think it's a spin. It's a spin up from Raytheon, I think.
Yeah,
right. Raytheon bought WebSense,
the
and then they built ForcePoint, the security side.
Right. So they play in the next gen firewall, proxy type stuff, some in the DLP market, and something else. I forget which. But now
CASB. They bought Skyfence from Imperva. Yeah.
Yes. So now they've snapped up Red Owl, which essentially is an EUBA vendor. Is that right? I get my red security vendors confused. Yeah.
No, you got it right.
So they snapped up Red Owl, which I think kind of strengthens their DLP sort of front. It'll be.
And doesn't it show you too that UBA is becoming a feature set? Yeah. Right. It's not a category. It's a feature. I think that's the mistake. Some people try to declare something like it's a category. No, it's a feature. And you're going to see really more acquisitions along the same. Yep.
Yeah. This one's interesting because I do know some of the ForcePoint stuff a little bit. This fits into their data management side, right? So ForcePoint trying to say, look, we're trying to help secure the human element of security, right? Because they have a very human-centric message. And they've got a couple different business units, cloud, the data side. Data side seems to be where the majority of the stuff is. The new CEO came over from Arbor Networks. So you've got this strong data play with the DLP, the CASB. This fits into the portfolio actually really, really well for them on understanding the interrelationship of data and users and behavior. So I think this is a very good acquisition for them because it fits into their kind of message and into their portfolio really, really well. And ForcePoint's also got a big federal practice as well. So this will kind of, I think, eventually see its way into some of the feds as well.
Interesting. I have received some feedback on ForcePoint. I'd like to receive more, as I've always looked at WebSense as a really awesome product. Obviously, ForcePoint is doing a lot more. So if you do have feedback on that, I won't disclose whether the feedback was good or bad. But yeah, you can make your guess as to what it is if I'm asking for more feedback. And of course, that was one person's opinion, right? So.
Well, I mean, it just look. WebSense is a good product. They bought StoneSoft, next gen firewall. You can debate whether that's future proof or not. You guys know my opinion on the firewall and the perimeter, right? The Skyfence acquisition on the CASB side fits well with the DLP story. Their DLP solution is actually, I think, differentiated over the others. Most DLPs are network based. They're endpoint based DLP. Gives them a little different insight into the data loss side and the data classification side. You marry that up with user and entity behavior analysis. I think there's some stuff there, personally.
AlgoSec. Are you guys familiar with AlgoSec? I've seen them. I haven't really done a deep dive in it. What do they do, Matt?
So you've got AlgoSec and Tufin on here, and they're kind of two competitors, right? Really, the firewall rule management guys, right? I mean, if you think about where both Tufin and AlgoSec came from, they came from how to automate the firewall rule management kind of stuff, kind of next gen from what Skybox and Red Seal were doing, right? But very kind of focused there. I didn't go into too deep into the announcements both by Tufin and AlgoSec because you guys know my stance on the firewall market. I'm like,
it's kind of like it's kind of a sleeper at this point, to be honest with you.
What's after next gen firewall?
The next gen.
I mean, we've already once you next gen that you're done.
Deep space. I think it's the deep space firewall is the one that comes.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I believe the category king there is Palo Alto, and if you look at what Palo Alto is doing, they're greatly diversifying and building on the next gen firewall, but they're not coming out with like the next gen firewall. They're greatly diversifying.
No, they've stopped talking about it too.
Yeah.
They set up a $100 million fund. They're looking for new stuff. Their message has completely changed. The things they're sponsoring have completely changed. It's like they said, okay, we're going to go create a new category. I mean, we talked about this last week on Startup, and it was like Matt, we put up a story, and somebody was like, the companies that you should invest in today, and it had Palo Alto, Cisco, NOPS, Checkpoint. And I was like, Checkpoint? I mean, look, maybe their stock fundamentals are solid, but I was like, Checkpoint? I mean, Palo Alto and Checkpoint was the category king. They got dethroned. Palo Alto came in and owned it. And PS, I don't even think they're really selling based on that anymore. Like I think they've changed their game. So yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And look, Palo Alto's definitely been the king of the next gen firewall, but as the perimeter changes, what's next for them? And I think it's a something they're trying to figure out. To me, if you're looking to make investments in where the next gen of good companies are going to come from, I'm still this big believer of, look, it's application security, because we're moving to a world of lots of digital applications. Obviously, user data, some of the automation stuff. I mean, we got to figure out the people gap aspects of security. We got to continue to think about how users' data and applications are going to play. Infrastructure is going to the cloud. I think it's all there. That means no more perimeter, so all your perimeter stuff is done. I mean, that's just the way I think, because I see the trends coming, and they're going to impact the traditional guys.
Yep.
And you know what? It's going to take forever to get there, and it's going to drive us absolutely nuts in the process.
Yeah, I know.
I
agree. Like last year, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, we've been talking about this for so long. Why can't you get there? But it's interesting too, and not to take this too far afield, but when we get later and we talk about things like automation and orchestration and looking at people and people-centric, it's the pendulum has been swinging for so long. Like we've been thirsting for more data, more contextual data, faster processing of the data, that somewhere along the line we went, wait, people still have to use this data, or if you look at something, for example, like phishing today, if you said, hey, I can solve that problem at your enterprise today, but it's going to cost $1 million a year because I need X number of people, they'd be like, oh, no, don't need that. I'm good. Yeah, by the way, I don't think you need that, but wait, so our solution is still, you say to people who rely on email, check it dogmatically. It's an instinctual habit now. Pavlov would be happy. And we say, oh, by the way, don't click on links. Really, that's the extent of how we're going to handle phishing today, folks. We didn't update. We didn't think about what we know and how to act on stuff better. And if we keep avoiding that and expecting all of these people that are already under an intense cognitive strain to magically learn new ways of doing things, we're nuts. We're nuts.
Well, and I think along those lines, Michael, you bring up a great point. The firewalls are infrastructure protection, and we've largely moved to other solutions to protect the end user. And because it used to be like, well, the firewall will just protect everything, right?
Yeah.
And then that's slowly...
Yeah, look, you had to dial up. The three of us are old enough, you can remember having to set up modem banks. Maybe you had a VPN in, but come on. No, you didn't. You dialed up. Dialed up, and you hoped you could get in. And if you had a 28.8, you were standard. If you were one of the cool kids, you had the 56... was 6 or whatever it was, and everybody got excited about it. And you could dial
really
in.
Old.
You could
I
check
still remember 9800.
Yeah. But so like
or
the thing
9600
is,
or whatever it was.
everybody
9600,
came
yeah.
in and we had total control over it. Yeah, we had a perimeter. Guys, I remember batch Windows. The stuff shut down at 10 o'clock at night, and you had hours to do your backups and to do your maintenance and to do anything else you wanted. You just had to be operational a little bit before normal working hours and a little bit later than normal working hours. And if you think about it today, I mean, gosh, when we gave people laptops, I mean, first of all, you needed like a roller bag to move those things around. They sure hell weren't they were barely portable. They weren't laptop. But like my kids now, like they're amazed at all the stuff we didn't have, because it's just like, well, I've got 18 different ways to check my email from 7 different devices.
Right.
You guys
And
didn't
half of them
always
fit
do
in your
that?
pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the
it's-
focus, has to be on protecting the endpoint, and that's not really. I mean, it does somewhat involve the firewall and the infrastructure.
Well, is it
could be one way,
protect
but
the endpoint? Because there's some people that say though, actually, it's go more granular, right? It's protect that data. It's encapsulated.
protect the application
differently.
too. Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
that's
or
what it's
application, right?
Look, Nirvana is protect the data, regardless of where it is. Then it doesn't matter anymore, right? And that's why homomorphic encryption is kind of like that holy grail that everybody's trying to figure out, which is where companies like Inveil, are making some strides, right? Because if you can protect the data regardless of where it is, the rest of the stuff, not as important, right? If you have the keys, you have the keys. If you don't have the keys, who cares where it is?
Well, that's a great segue into our next topic of security operations and endpoint protection. So we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.